Hello poker enthusiasts. There is one skill in No Limit Hold'em that nobody really talks about, but it can increase your win rate significantly if you know how to apply it properly. I came across such a spot in a 1-3 game at the Vic in London recently. I had a pair on the river and I should have turned it into a bluff, but I missed the opportunity. And I also made a few more mistakes in that session, so let's see if you could have avoided them.
So in this first hand we have a limper and we have a decent reg making it 15. We 3-bet ace-king off in the big blind. I could actually have gone a little bit bigger here out of position, but 4x is okay. The cutoff calls, 8-7-5. We don't really have a backdoor either. So at this point I'm thinking I should either bet big or check, with most of my range preferring to check, but I think in live low stakes games it's never a mistake to fire a c-bet in a 3-bet pot, because people just overcall the 3-bet and then overfold the c-bet. So that's what I do here. I go 70, but unfortunately the cutoff calls. We don't get help, and not only that, but now it's 4 straight to the board. So at this point I am pretty much done with a hand. I check, but then he makes it this annoyingly small, 60 into 264. So at this point I'm thinking, well, he either has a really nutted hand and wants to extract value, or more likely than not he just wants a bit of protection with an overpair or something like that. So I just thought, okay, if I river an ace or a king, then I'm almost getting the right odds here, and then maybe I can donk and extract some value. So I thought, okay, well, let's just call here. So I call, and hey presto, we river an ace. So now let's follow through with a plan. So I have to donk, and I don't want to donk too big because I'll only get called by something that beats me, but maybe a hand like tens through even kings would sigh call here if I make it something like this, 85. And this doesn't happen. No, because he now jams on me. So it's possible that he recognized what's going on here, but I strongly doubt it. More likely than not, this is a very nutted hand. At least a set, probably a 9, if not even 9-10. So I definitely fold here. The next one is a very bizarre one. Under the gun makes it 11, old school reg on the button calls, and I didn't really want to fold here. Calling is not great either out of position with this hand, so I decided to squeeze, and the under the gun player folds, and the old school reg on the button calls. Now what is an old school reg? That's a player who is a winning player but who has not really studied GTO sizings and GTO in general. So this guy will just pot a lot of c-bets and do other funky things. However, this works most of the time against recreational players. That's why he's still a winning player. Here 10-8-8 is another one of those boards in a 3-bet pot where we should either bet big or check. I decide to go big here because my hand can definitely do with some protection against a hand like ace queen, ace jack, queen jack, whatever. So let's go 70 here. He calls, and the turn is amazing. Now we only lose to pocket eights and we are in value extracting mode. I thought that I could do this best here by just going small, because this is a size that an 8 will call, and this is also a size that an overpair will call, and I don't care if he has a 10 anyway. So he does call here, and the river is a brick here, a low card. That's great. I thought of shoving here, but I thought that's almost a pot size bet. I might even fold out an 8, and I will most likely fold out an overpair if I do that. I didn't want to go too small, so I thought an 8 would call a bet like something like half pot, so I go 230 here, and now the interesting thing begins. The guy on the button, he now says, oh, I have an 8, and look at this board. Dealer, what have you done to me? Look at this board. I have an 8. What shall I do here with my 8? Oh, I don't know. He was just going and moaning and huffing and puffing bluffing, and then he does this, then he just jams. So I was like really confused. Obviously I'm not going anywhere. I snap called and he says, nice call, I had to try, and he mucks his hand. So obviously he was just Hollywooding. He doesn't have an 8 because he would have showed his 8 here. He was trying to get me off an overpair probably, but I mean I would probably never really bet an overpair that big here, would I? But anyway, like I was just not deep enough. Look, I made it 230 and he jams for 395. I mean, I probably won't even fold aces here if I did that, but maybe he was trying to get me off aces with his spiel of him having an 8 or whatever. But then I'm wondering, what did he call with before? Did he turn pocket jacks or here into a bluff? I don't know. I will probably never find out, but I was happy that he did that play and that I won a big pot. This next hand is an example of a thin value bet gone wrong. We have a limp here, we make it 20 with ace jack off. The limper calls, jack 10 8, definitely going to bet here, just over half pot with top pair, top kicker, we get called. And on this queen of clubs, I thought I need to still go with a thin value bet, thinking that, well, if he has a jack or a 10 or an 8, he might still call here. Not really thinking that any kicker that he would have to these hands, it would be something that connects really well with his board, so it would be either a straight already or at least two pair. So I made it really small. Thankfully I didn't make it any bigger, but I thought I could get called here. And it's possible like king 10 or something like that could call, but I still think it's probably slightly too weak. And he does indeed call here, and we get really lucky on the river because it doesn't only bring in the 4 flush but also the 4 straight, and we win against his turn 2 pair. Here we have pocket aces on the button, that's always welcome. An aggro player makes it 15 in the hijack, we go 50 on the button, he calls 10 10 6. This is another one of those boards where we can either go big or check, and this time I think is the time to just check because we have an aggressive player against us and we don't need a lot of protection. So I just check behind. Now the king of hearts, he checks to me once again, and this card is really good for my range, so this is what I would do all day with any sort of a hand, to now just bet out, bet fairly big, 65 into 104, and now I surprisingly get raised to 180. Still nothing else to do than to call, obviously not jamming here or anything like that, never folding, so I have to call. And on this 4 river he just checks, and I think I made a mistake here. In the previous hand I value bet too thinly, and here I didn't value bet thinly enough. I just decided to check behind because I thought he either has a missed flush draw or just complete air here, or he was trapping me with a 10, and in all these cases I don't want to bet here, but I think this was a mistake. I should have just jammed and got max value from a king. Instead I just checked behind, and he had the 7 high flush draw. I mean, he wouldn't have called my jam here obviously, so no harm done, but I still think I missed out on a good river bet here. Here I open ace-5 of clubs under the gun, and the low jack, who is a very loose player, calls. And when I say very loose, this is a type of guy who calls 9 deuce offsuit to a big raise pre-flop. Big blind also calls 10-7-5. We have bottom pair, definitely not gonna see bet here against this loose player, and with bottom pair out of position it checks through, and now we have the ace. This is the time to go for value here. I thought if someone has an ace or a weaker 2 pair, we can get a lot of value out of them, so I decide to overbet already here on the turn, and our loose friend in the low jack does indeed call. And on the 4 of hearts river, I'm still absolutely in value betting mode. I go 155 into 111. Definitely good sizing here, I think, because he would call with a lot of weaker stuff, and he absolutely snapped me off. And when he saw my 2 pair, he said, oh, very nice hand, and he mucked his hand. This one here was very confusing to me when I played it. I see it much clearer now and I know what mistakes I made. Here a loose aggressive recreational player in the low jack makes it 15. He is a very loose player indeed. He never really folds, but I think he's probably still a winning player in this pool. A reg in the cutoff calls and I decide to just squeeze here. I should have gone a bit bigger because this guy in the low jack, he really calls with hands like 8-6 suited or something like that, so I think I could have gotten some value out of it. He called here and also the cutoff calls. Now we flop top pair, but then this happens and this really confused me. I just couldn't think what hands this guy would donk with here. I thought he wouldn't ever do this with a draw. He would check raise a draw, he would check raise a set, he would check raise 2 pair, so I thought, well, he might have a good 10 then, and I beat some of his 10s, like not many, but queen 10 and jack 10, and I lose to ace 10, but he could have all combinations of those because I think he would just call it queen 10 offsuit here against squeeze. So when the cutoff folds, I just think I have an easy call here, nothing else to do for me. Now the turn is pretty much a break and he now bets again. I think if he had bet bigger I would have folded at this point, but now I'm still a bit confused and he only makes it just over a third pot, so I still think I have to call here. Thinking that I might still be good and he would still not take that line with a really nutted hand. And then the river brings in the diamond and he checks to me. And I thought I didn't call the turn with a pair to now bluff here, but this is basically what I should have done, because yes, whilst I still win against queen 10 and jack 10, I don't win against anything else that he did that for value with, or for protection I should say, and he doesn't have a flush. I mean, this is not the line that a flush would take, and especially not this player. So absolutely I should turn my pair into a bluff here. I should just jam and he would probably fold the 10 or better. Instead I opted to check behind and I lost to pocket jacks. Now this is a hand that I can see why he played it like that. It's not the way he should have played it, but that said, he got maximum value out of me probably, and he said afterwards that if I bet the river he would just snap fold his hand here, and I do believe that, and that's really something I miss doing here. A few minutes later I move to another table and I open ace 10 suited under the gun, and a good reg calls me in the big blind. He is a 2-5 player waiting for his seat there, so I have to play pretty much GTO against him here. 6-3 deuce, I have 2 overs and a backdoor. He checks. I could definitely see bet this one, but against an aggressive player I'm not so sure I want to do it, so I just thought with ace high and the backdoor I prefer to just check behind here, and then we turn flush draw. He now goes 25, and at this point I think it's just best to just call here, take my equity. I still have ace high and I might be able to bluff catch on the river as well, but no need for that because we river the nuts and he now overbets into us. So I would say this is normally a very polarized action, pretty much the nut flush or a bluff, and well, spoiler alert, we have the nut flush, so he can't have a real value hand. He can't have the king high flush, and would he do this with a queen high flush? I mean, maybe, it's not impossible, but even then, would he call our raise? And it's so unlikely that he has a flush here anyway. That said, we have the nuts, we have to raise. I was confused, I didn't really know what size to go. I went for this kind of silly in-between size of 400. I should probably just have jammed here and hope to get a queen high flush to call, but quite honestly I do not have any bluffs here. Like at live low stakes no one ever bluffs here with the ace of clubs, plus what ace of clubs do I have here that are not suited? I can raise from under the gun, so my only unsuited hands are ace king or possibly ace queen, and even then would I call the turn with that? I strongly doubt it, and indeed he just snap folds. He probably just had a complete bluff here. This last hand of the day here was potentially one of the most interesting hands I played all year. I opened pocket jacks in the hijack, a passive recreational player on the button calls, and the big blind, the same reg from the previous hand, calls as well. We flopped to full house here, amazing flop for us, but I decided to just check because there is not a lot of value that can be gained here, and I was hoping that one of the two players would catch up a bit on later. Now with a 4 on the turn is actually a good card for me, because if someone has a jack or a pocket pair, I can extract quite a bit of value here, so I go for 20. And the recreational player on the button calls, the reg folds. And on this river I definitely need to go really big here. I overbet to 100, I'm in absolute value mode. And then this happens. Fortune reversal at its best. I mean, this is a player who 10 minutes earlier, he had a set of 4s on 10-9-4, so he check raised with that. And then on the run out of 5-3, he check called the turn, check called the river, didn't check jam the river with a set. So this is what you have to know about him. Yet here he decides to raise my overbet. Now I did an Instagram poll and the people were split. Almost no one said fold, and the majority went for an all-in here in my spot, with about 40 or 45% saying that they would have just called. Now I seriously considered folding here, but then I decided I just can't do it. I mean, I would look so silly if you turned over king jack or slow played aces here, or even pocket eights, which is not inconceivable. So I said I have to call here, but I'm just not sure he would really raise with either of the hands that I just mentioned. I think he kind of really only raises with the nuts here, and in that case it is a fold. But yeah, I think almost nobody folds here. Let me know if you would fold and decide before I do the reveal here. But I just decided I just can't fold, and I think almost no one can, and I decided to flick in the remaining 200, and I was shown, of course, quads here. I didn't really expect anything else, but as I said, I'm just not good enough to fold this one here. And with this said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this and learned something, and if you want to watch more hands that I played, then click on this next video up here.